This is the story of a Nigerian scammer who sold a fake airport. Nelson Sakaguchi, a bank executive from one of the largest banks in Brazil, received a life-changing call. On the other end of the line was the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, and he wanted to grow the country by building a major airport unlike the country had ever seen. The project would cost a whopping $242 million, and Nelson would receive $10 million commission for investing in the project. They met in London, and Nelson shook hands with the governor, deputy governor, and the director of aviation. They showed him all of the business plan details and discussed the entire infrastructure. Nelson was completely convinced that they shook hands and made a deal. A home run investment for Nelson. There was just one problem. It was all a lie. This is the insane story of how one of the smartest criminals in history sold a fake airport for a whopping sum of $242 million. The man behind this insane story is Emmanuel Wude. Now, there is a bit of mystery surrounding Emmanuel and his upbringing, but it's assumed that he was born anywhere between 1950 and 1955 in the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, and his aspirations were anything but modest. From a young age, Emmanuel wanted to be rich and was driven by an insatiable desire to escape poverty and rise above the ordinary. He was extremely gifted and highly intelligent for his age, and it was in the electrifying world of finance that Emmanuel saw his ticket to prosperity. As a young adult, Emmanuel ventured into the world of banking, where he quickly gained a reputation for his sharp intellect and ability to navigate the complex world of finance. Through hard work, perseverance, charm, and charisma, he climbed the corporate ladder and later became the director of the Union Bank of Nigeria. And he was doing extremely well for himself. He no longer lived in poverty, and he was the director of a reputable bank, but it wasn't enough. Emmanuel wanted more. The kind of money that could buy him loads of power and influence. And soon, he would come up with a plan that would etch his name into the annals of financial history forever. In the early 90s, Nigeria was undergoing a transformation. The nation had recently declared Abuja as its new capital, a decision that would ignite a frenzy of economic development priority. Number one for the Nigerian government was large-scale infrastructure projects with a primary focus on building a world-class international airport. Emmanuel saw this as the golden opportunity he had been waiting for, and he came up with a brilliant idea, one that would put him in the Hall of Fame of con men. He was going to sell a fake airport and trick investors out of millions, but Emmanuel wouldn't be able to pull this off all on his own. He would need a team, so he handpicked a group of 5 individuals, all highly skilled in the areas of finance and banking. Their deep knowledge of the financial sector as well as their connections would make it easier to pull off the heist of the century. The plan would involve each of them impersonating high-ranking officials. Once everyone was aware of their role and the details of their plan, it was time to execute. The team started by carefully sending detailed faxes to banks all over the world. These faxes contained an official letter pretending to be from a top Nigerian official named Richest Yahoo, who supposedly worked in the financial planning and budgeting department of the Nigerian Ministry of Aviation, an identity that was completely made up by the team. The letter announced Nigerians' intent to develop a major airport project in Abuja, a city experiencing rapid growth since being declared the new capital in 1991. After they sent all the faxes, they waited patiently, eager to see if anyone would bite into their bait of lies. Time passed, and it seemed like no one was interested when all of a sudden they received a fax back from a man named Nelson Sakaguchi from Banco Noricete, a major bank of Brazil. Nelson said he was extremely interested in the proposal and that his bank had been looking for new investment opportunities for quite some time. As Emmanuel read the fax, a smirk appeared across his face and the rest of the team. The plan was now in full effect. Emmanuel immediately called Nelson, but he couldn't just be himself for the scam to work. He needed to represent someone of great power and authority, someone who could be trustworthy. So instead, he pretended to be the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, this was before the rise of the internet, so you couldn't just look up what the actual governor looked like. So this was Emmanuel's perfect opportunity. After using his charm and charisma, Emmanuel convinced Nelson that the deal was completely legitimate. To maintain the illusion, Emmanuel told Nelson that the project had to be completely confidential, so they needed to meet somewhere that was outside of both Nigeria and Brazil. Nelson suggested that they met in London. Emmanuel agreed, and meticulous planning began. The team thoroughly prepared for the meeting, each member assuming the identity of high-ranking official. Emmanuel was the governor, with other members impersonating the deputy governor and the director of aviation. Their presentation would include detailed airport plans, a well-thought-out business proposal, and even fake documents to support all their claims. After everything was fully prepared, the team was now ready to fly to London. To build their credibility and illusion even more, they sent a limousine to pick up Nelson from the airport. He was also accommodated with a luxurious 5-star hotel suite complement of the governor of the central bank. As the meeting commenced, each member introduced themselves to the role that they rehearsed. Each showed charm, confidence, and charisma, and Nelson believed every word that they were telling him. Emmanuel again made it clear that they wished to keep the project completely confidential and that the construction wouldn't begin for another 4 to 5 years. Nelson told him that the bank would be ready to transfer the funds whenever they were ready to actually start the project. But Emmanuel was a smooth talker. He told Nelson that they had to have the funds immediately, for they had a lot of planning to do, such as hiring companies and gathering all of the tools and materials, so money had to start flowing immediately so they could get the project started. Nelson was a bit nervous and began to doubt himself. Emmanuel picked up on this quickly and told him not to worry if he wasn't comfortable, for they already had numerous investors waiting, so the project would be completed regardless. This made Nelson feel like he was going to miss out on a big investment opportunity. He said that even if he agreed, his bank's management wasn't going to approve. Emmanuel once again told him not to worry, that they could just go to their other investors, but he would offer Nelson a $10 million commission if he resolved the issue himself. That commission was a cherry on top for Nelson, so he agreed to the deal and they shook hands for an investment of $242 million for the new airport. Before concluding their meeting, Emmanuel used his persuasion to convince Nelson to transfer them a $3 million deposit as proof of his commitment to the project. Nelson was now in the palm of their hands. Over the next 3 years, from 1995 to 1998, Nelson transferred $242 million to Emmanuel and his accomplices. To cover their tracks, they spread the transfers across 17 banks in different countries, with none of the bank's management catching wind of the fraud. The team was full of highly intelligent individuals, so instead of just spending the money on fancy cars, yachts, and mansions, they all invested their money into real estate in Nigeria and various regions worldwide. They also bought shares in multiple companies. Emmanuel and the team would send fake documents and contracts of the different businesses they were acquiring for the airport to Nelson so that they wouldn't raise suspicion. The team had officially gotten away with the heights of the country, but soon their empire of deception was about to crumble. Hey guys, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please do me a favor and hit the like button, alright? In 1998, a man named Jamie Lopez, one of the directors of Banco Noroeste, found himself extremely frustrated. His bank was being acquired by the largest bank in Spain for a massive $500 million. He had an important role to play in this deal, but he lacked crucial information. He couldn't find out where a third of the bank's capital had gone. It seemed to have just vanished into thin air, and it all pointed to one man who would have the answers: Nelson Sakaguchi. Nelson was summoned by the board of directors to explain where the money had gone. Nelson kept stalling, and Jamie was fed up, so he confronted Nelson, grabbed him by the collar, and demanded the last 3 years of documentation for their international operations. Nelson confessed and said, I have always had gambling in my blood. And he then shared the details of the $242 million investment deal that he hid behind all of their backs. The board was enraged, and this marked the beginning of an international investigation into the third largest banking fraud in history. The investigation traced everything back to Nigeria, and Emmanuel and his group were exposed. However, Nigeria had a huge lack of financial fraud laws, so the team actually remained free. Meanwhile, Nelson was arrested and charged with money laundering and sentenced to prison for 20 years. The owners of the bank, however, were furious that their money was gone, so they tried to find ways to recover some of the lost funds. But since almost all of the money was in real estate and investment, they couldn't recover anything. It seemed as if all hope was lost for the Brazilian bank. However, a new president took over Nigeria, and 4 years later, he established a Financial Crimes Commission in 2003, in which they heavily pursued Emmanuel and his team, leading to their investigation and then arrest in 2004. 5 of them were arrested, but remember, they started with a team of 6. What happened to the 6th one? Well, it turns out that the 6th member mysteriously died in a car crash during the investigation. Hope you were informed and enjoyed this video. For more of this, make sure you subscribe. But don't forget to share and don't forget to like. See you in the next video.